Finally, hello, good morning, greetings, welcome everyone to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you are here. It is Tuesday, July 5th, 2022. Welcome back, everyone. A extra long weekend here in the United States. We did celebrate Independence Day yesterday, July 4th, and our sun is now conjunct Sirius. So welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a great weekend, great couple of days off or not, whatever you were up to. Boy, oh boy, what a day already. I don't even know where to start. I thought I knew where to start, and then every technical difficulty that could have happened this morning, it definitely did happen. So part of that is certainly the Monday or the beginning of the week, right? Getting restarted and whatnot. And I feel like I can't burn enough sage right now to clear away a very sudden influx of frustration and irritability, of course, and get ready to offer this transmission. I would invite you to do the same. I know the stream isn't exactly perfect right now. I know there's a lot of buffering, so I'm really sorry. I'm doing my best to figure out the technical difficulties, but know that the standard American 4th of July celebration, right? Picnics, family gathering, fireworks, baseball games, all of the trappings of the American lifestyle. So I thought it was really good. I was really, unfortunately, not surprised, but still dismayed about the violence that was reported over the weekend. It's really part of the, it's very interesting, the part of the experience here that is almost setting us up to start being so desensitized to these acts of violence that we almost expect them. And I don't know what that really says at this point. The shooting in Philadelphia, I found that to be, obviously very personal because this is the area where I'm from, where my family is from. A pretty strong connection, actually, to that area for many generations on both sides of my family. I also remember going to that 4th of July festival in Philly when I lived there. That was like 2007, and that was wild. And I can't, at that point, even imagine feeling, having to even consider that in that type of venue. Now, I worked in West Philly where gunshots and shootings were a regular occurrence. And so that's an interesting dynamic as well, is that the rampant violence and this expectation in some ways of this type of violence has now kind of expanded or spread out to impact more than just the disenfranchised that have been living with this reality for a very, very long time. And so it's kind of interesting to have that memory of that time. So I was working for AmeriCorps. I was working in West Philadelphia, right, where there are no white people except for me apparently at that time, and then one other person in the office that was not a melanated person who was doing this AmeriCorps project. But there was one day, I remember there was one evening where there were 8 shootings in West Philly in that neighborhood alone. And that same night, there were 8 shootings in North Philly, which also had been traditionally where the melanated people and the working class people were living. And so there was a lot of gun violence. So I think it's, I'm dismayed, I'm disheartened, I'm sad, all of those things, very unhappy with the fact that we are starting to almost expect in some ways to be terrorized at our own public gatherings. But it's also a revelation of what many people have been living with on the daily for who knows how long, as a result of the same exact bodies making decisions and implementing this type of domestic terroristic reality. It's been happening in communities for a very long time. It's systemic in a lot of ways. And now that it's reaching out into areas that have been primarily considered, at least safe in some ways from this type of random acts of violence, now you start to see it's being revealed now. When you can keep it kind of contained within certain groups and then, of course, convince them that it's each other who is the enemy, how convenient. But as much as I'm dismayed and as much as I'm very personally impacted by at least that one event over the weekend at the 4th of July celebration at the parade. I mean, this is a huge event, right? There's a massive stage. There's thousands and thousands of people that gather. But at the same time, it's like they're showing themselves now because they have to up the ante to be able to continue their narrative of divisiveness. And it's exhausting. And in fact, when we look at the reading today of each other and realizing how much that we have been kind of imposed upon and contained in a type of prison system. So, oh boy, so I'm going to just check in with the chat and the stream and make sure it's going well. People are saying they had a great holiday, had a good time too, except for fireworks throughout the night. Yeah, definitely. I live in a rural environment and that's still the same thing in certain ways. And guns, right? Lots of gunshots into the air here in the northernmost hillbilly land, which is Pennsylvania. So the Appalachian Mountains. Boy, oh boy. So we're going to look at a little bit of space weather. We know that CERN is getting fired up today, right? That's been a pretty strong focus here since they've announced that today, July 5th, is when they're going to pretty much utilize more energy now, more energy in this one blast of the particle collider than probably the entire country uses in a year, the United States at least. So why are they doing that? I don't know. I mean, there's plenty of conversation we can have about that. The poll and the survey on Subscribestar, so we can shore up a date and time for people so that we can get together and gather. The Starseed Fellowship is twice a month. It is a Zoom interaction, and it's like a talking circle, right? We pass the talking stick, so to speak, and people just have a space where we can. This week's Catalyst Classroom. If you're interested in any of these things, there are resources in the description box below, regardless of what platform you're on, that will give you more information about these things. But I do want to show here, where did it go? There we go. So this week for Catalyst Classroom, this month's sessions are all about Black Moon Lilith. We're going to talk about that today too because of where Black Moon Lilith is currently astrologically, but session 2 that will be posted this week for the Catalyst Classroom tier on Subscribestar is all about the astrology of Black Moon Lilith. So what is Black Moon Lilith in astrology? What does it stand for? What is the astronomy of this space, really? What Black Moon Lilith means in the houses, in the signs, right? Get a general overview, and then we'll do a chart reading demonstration with a volunteer chart to see how you can read Lilith in the chart. So if you're interested in that, like I said, there are resources in the description box below. A good way to know as well, if you're not always following these things, is to get on the email list, and that is also linked in the description box below. So, my friends, let's get into the space weather for today. So what I think 50, but for the most part, it has been fairly quiet in terms of volume. What I did find interesting, actually, here, let me, we're going to do this. What I did find interesting is even though that the Schumann was, other than that one day, fairly quiet, that there was some variability in the actual frequency itself, or the actual pitch that I'm going to share with you whenever it decides that it's ready to load. There we go. The internet has just been, the technical difficulties just today, and that's I'm just like, have they fired up CERN already? Like, what is going on? Because it had started off, it's already just, everything is glitching pretty significantly, at least in my life. I don't know. It feels like a Mercury retrograde. And granted, Mercury has now moved into Cancer. Mars has moved in. Right? This is an energy that is way more, not so much fixed, but it has the momentum towards receiving and stillness and the fixed well, it is fixed Taurus, right? In cardinal water, there is a lot more of the feminine stillness, receptiveness, solidity that is involved with Taurus and Scorpio when it has to do with our minds and our action. A symbolic act of, okay, this is where I belong now. So again, there could be some readjustment in our minds and conceptualization right now, but those two are in a sextile at that 0 degree mark. We'll talk about it with the astrology. I also talked about it on the forecast on Friday too, if you remember. So here there was an amplification right around here where you see the drop in frequency, and then it climbs back up into closer to 8 hertz, right? And then there was this really strong increase while the rest of it was decreasing, all these lines here. So as the frequency is dropping at these multiple levels, this one is going up to 8.16. That's pretty substantial in terms of a pitch, okay? So, and there was in the amplification here, so something happened. I do know that the sun is starting to flare. We're going to look at that in a minute. And there was definitely geomagnetic unrest throughout yesterday. There was some solar storms, there were some auroras, but there wasn't loudness to the Schumann. But there was this one spike right here. And then it evened out again over the course of today so far. I think that's very interesting. I don't know what that means. I just noticed that it's outside of the normal correlations and connections that we see. So when we look at the planetary index, speaking of geomagnetic unrest, we see that it was pretty mellow on Sunday. Yesterday, we got hit with some solar wind. There's a coronal hole, actually, if we look here, that is pretty much facing us. And so we're already starting to get the solar wind. So it's going up in speed. The density is starting to increase of the actual plasma density itself as it's facing us. And so we're probably going to get more the reds and the yellows over the course of the next day or so, especially because there's probably also a CME coming because the sun actually has been, in fact, flaring. And there was an M-class flare sometime this morning. Let me see if I can find a good... Where is my... I had a graphic for, there it is, the flares, a graph for the flares. So it's kind of hard to see, at least with this ring light in my face, but you can see every time it spikes on this, it shows when the sun has let off a flare. So it's getting more consistent. And we're about halfway through the 11-year sun cycle, which means we're getting to solar maximum pretty, the peak of the solar maximum cycle here pretty soon. So we're going to start seeing an uptick in all of this type of activity for sure. And I think, let me see if there's anything else I can show you. Yeah, here's that coronal hole stream and the planetary index. So when the geomagnetic disturbance, right, when there is high solar wind, when the plasma is increased, we know that it affects the magnetics of us and all life and the planet itself. And so be ready, at least, that this is when it's starting to get very real. And one of the things I said on the Friday broadcast, if you remember, is that we're going to be so different. We're going to have learned so much by the end of this even lunar cycle and throughout July. And part of that, too, is going to be the increase or the uptick in solar activity. Wind, those things are going to start increasing. And we know that those types of conditions pass with certain groups of people, right? Depending on certain medical interventions that you have opted into or even felt forced into. There are pretty strong correlations with cardiovascular health and issues around that. And so with the solar weather also increasing and having an impact on those things are also going to start being brought up to the surface. And just like with people's mental health, and that comes from a lot of different places, and you can be sure that it has been exploited already by those who would stand to benefit from people's mental health, really starting to falter, cracking under the pressure. Remember where Saturn is. Saturn in its retrograde. I mean, in Aquarius, right? The intensive magnetics, right? The wavelength. Gosh, I mean, Aquarius is the wavelength, and it is the water bearer, but what is water other than the representation archetypally and alchemically of the flow of our spirit and love? And so, and the voice, the feeling, man, it is going to be intense as I stare into this like coronal hole here. It's like a black hole of in the middle of our sun, but knowing that this energy is coming at us. Wow. So first, I want to share with you, now that we've gotten a sense of what the sun is doing and what it's going to do and the impact that it's going to continue to have on people, let's look at the reading that I had the pleasure of receiving this morning. It was very difficult. I mean, you know, it's a long weekend. There's a lot going on, right? You are impacted by a lot of different family. You're having events. You're going to events. You are surrounded by a lot of messaging and signaling, but also just a sense of all those really strong Cancerian feelings of belonging and a sense of almost pride, but more of loyalty and a sense of real faithfulness in where you belong. All these patriotic types of energies are really indicative of the Cancer archetype, and specifically Sirius right now. There was a reason. I mean, Sirius as a star, Isis as Isis, Black Moon Lilith, Inanna, right? The feminine sacred goddess archetype. Is very interwoven into the mystery schools, which, whether you like it or not, are very interwoven into the creation of this country. And from both sides here, in terms of mystery school, what are your goals here? Is it for spiritual evolution of humanity, or is it for control and power and manipulation? They're both at play here. It's us realizing it, but that's really seems to be important. But so there is a reason that the sun conjunct Sirius is woven into the birth of this country. And so every year we come around to this time, and the Cancerian element, this lattice structure of love and devotion and a sense of guardianship and protection that the womb or the vessel or the family or the community really it provides, allows us to really deepen our connection to ourselves and deepen our connection to something timeless, to something infinite, right? Which is the infinite void, the infinite space. And talk about a connection to not only Lilith, but Sirius as well in the sign of Cancer. Well, in the constellation of Cancer, the sign of Cancer, the constellation of Canis Major, or the dog, which is why Sirius is called the dog star. And anybody that has a dog, who's ever had a dog, knows anything about dogs, they are empaths to the nth degree, right? They're completely loyal. They're completely empathic, right? And they are completely devoted to whoever is the leader of their pack, basically, or the pack itself. I think that's really more accurate. So what we see in this reading here is, again, the disappointment is still very much part of what's going on. We have the Nine of Cups reversed as the center here. I mean, the Nine of Cups upright is the, the full saturation of happiness, right? Everything that you'd ever want emotionally, all the cups upright, all of them full. 9 being the number of understanding, Jupiter in Pisces. I mean, this is everything that you'd ever want, desired, imagining being fulfilled spiritually, and in a sense of real unconditional love. And so with it reversed here at the center of this reading, you do get a sense here that it's either, kind of being self-indulgent with all of this happiness, but I think here that it's a sense of getting your cups knocked over so you kind of wake up, right? And we're going to see here finally just they're really starting to maybe realize how absolutely exhausting it is to stay tapped into this battle emotionally, because it's not fulfilling, right? It's not fulfilling. It may have been fun to a certain extent, with this Princess of Wands here as our causal factor. It may have been, I mean, this is what she represents. And there's lust, there's passion, there's enthusiasm, right? There's courage here with the Princess of Wands. This is Venus in the fire signs. She has not quite gotten here yet. She is still only in Gemini. Maybe Venus in Aries was this kind of, I want what I want when I want it, and I'm going to burn everything down along the way. But there's also this sense of real enthusiasm and playfulness almost, right? I mean, you have lighting the fire of devotion and lust and passion, right? Being able to fulfill oneself through the understanding of the big picture and the alchemical transmutation that occurs with understanding, right? That's what it is. You're creating something new. So it's not all bad here in terms of what she represents, but there is an immaturity, and there's not a lot of groundedness here. There's really, the only groundedness is the Venus part. And she is about comfort and attraction, and this card is again, this woman, this princess will burn down desire even and move on to the next one and forget about it entirely, right? There's no space necessarily to be even considering the the consequences of one's actions. But this is about freedom as well. So there's a lot of ways that this can be interpreted. But as a court card, this does represent us in some way, something that we identify with, maybe somebody in our life that seems to be kind of this carefree, burning it all down, passion and enthusiasm and beauty in a lot of ways that has been the causal factor now, because there is a sense of not really being responsible for what's happening here, or just being very carefree and not really considering the other side of what has been burned down in the wake of this experience. And you know, you get to this nine of cups then almost immediately from here, and you see that it's like it just kind of knocked everything over. Or in some ways, maybe we've just kind of burnt ourselves out, or it's all evaporated, right? Because it's been so much fire, so much action, so much anima, so much release of energy without maybe filling our cups, right? Does that start to make sense now that it's just been output, or it's been especially with Mars in Aries too, I'm not gonna lie. Up until today, really, it has been Mars in Aries, like really acting on this as well. But the experience of it is the princess part, the Venusian part, the physical, like. Now, there is some self-indulgence that you can see with the princess coming into this moment with this Nine of Cups reversed. There's definitely some potential for that, because it's perfect harmony and fulfillment, but that's the risk of being very self-indulgent when all your cups are full and you have everything you need in front of you. The temptation here is to just enjoy this, which there's nothing wrong with, but you forget about the reflection that keeps the light on the waters alive, right? If you just get into the experience of it without understanding where it's come from, then you do get self-indulgent. Maybe there's some vanity here. And if there's any archetype that has vanity, it's Venus. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. That's where it comes from, is this sense of self-value. And so But also being turned over like this is like the opposite of happiness, right? Everything is just spilled out and your cups are completely empty. So I get the sense here that this is this is the wake up call now, right? There's been a lot of disappointment. Everyone here, this is a general snapshot, but this is something about the tide turning here and people really starting to come into awareness about where their power is coming from and where it's going and where it's been and how they've maybe allowed themselves to stay in this imposed type of prison. Because that's the other side of Cancer that can be very dark, right? Is so insular that you can't with anyone else, right? It's a completely impermeable wall and boundary rather than this permeable membrane that has a sophisticated system of letting things in and out, just like your cells, right? If your cells were completely blocked off, then you never get the things that you need. Same thing here. I think there's been a lot of this insular nature that is just not paying off now for people. And right here is our War of Roses in its reversal. So, this is the conflict has been so disruptive and the relationship is so broken now that we have really no choice but to realize we've been attached to an illusion and just be honest with what it is we've been attached to, whatever it is. The battle in some ways within ourselves is already over, like at a spiritual level, and that's something to consider school, but outside of it, like the battle has already ended, right? And so it's up to us in this moment as humans in this experience to also accept this. And I think that this is starting to become maybe not quite relevant yet. I also get the sense too that what we're looking at is not everybody's going to get it, but they're starting to, right? I mean, I think it's really starting to hit, to really hit people emotionally and in their feels. That this has always been untenable, but now it's just like, okay, this is broken. This is an illusion. It's time to let it go entirely. And you'll see surrounded both of these, right? The Queen of Forces and the Mountain Goat is about balance. It's about equilibrium. So for those who are still heartbroken, even though there is this, there's a realization, but it's not a good one or a happy one, that should I say, right? I mean, here's your Nine of Cups turned all over, right? You've been very carefree and fancy free about some things. And now it's like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't really, emotionally, wow, this is something way deeper, and it's starting to make its way up to the surface. So, and speaking of the surface and what people are paying attention to, 16, caught in the ruins, right? I mean, this is pretty self-explanatory in terms of a dark and difficult situation that appears to have us trapped, right? And realizing that it's our own self-imprisonment in terms of feeling like we're trapped in the material, not becoming aware of our connection to our own spirit through. It takes effort and determination to climb out of this. And I think this is showing where the collective awareness is, the conscious attention awareness is that it's some people may still feel trapped. Other people may have the number 5 on the other side of it. I mean, this is the only way out is through, and part of that is being willing to go somewhere new, to even acknowledge there's somewhere else to go. And then when you do that, you're like, oh, I'm going to lift up out of here. But there's something here that with Hilarion that we'll get into a little bit deeper, that is part of getting out of this self-imposed prison, right? To really be open to this communication to your higher self and to really use your logic, like your logic. I think that's important as well. And all of this truly, the Nine of Cups might be reversed, but the Nine of Discs is upright. And here's another Venus card, Venus in Virgo. What have we gained? This is very positive, satisfied type of outcome, right? Health, successful healing after an illness, well-being, material happiness. It's in this experience as much as it's happiness upended, right? The Nine of Cups totally spilling out. What we gain truly from this in a material, in a well-being, in a health and wellness type of way, is going to be so much more satisfying, and something that we can really put our hands on and gather, right? Something that we can actually feel in a physical way, a material way, and something that we can be comfortable with and satisfied with. So there's a lot of there continues to be a lot of Venus energy involved, the sacred feminine, obviously, when we're talking about sacred feminine energy, excuse me. Okay. So, boy, oh boy. And like I said, surrounding some of this, those six of roses reversed, the Queen of Forces, right? We have to find that balance again within ourselves. That is at the base of us and our ability to balance the masculine, feminine, the yin and the yang, the up and the down, the black and the white, right? Whatever it is, we are the balancer. And with the moon coming into Libra today, this is, and being in its first quarter in Libra, squaring a sun, this is going to be, keep in mind, as we will need to readjust ourselves externally in terms of that first quarter crisis. What do we do, right? The crisis in action. And so the balancing act is a big part of this. So, sorry guys, hold on one second. I need to take a really strong drink. And the mountain goat, right? There's something out of balance in your life, so do what you need to do to correct it. Well, it's pretty clear that noticing how you feel when you're out of balance is going to be a big component to understanding how you are going to balance yourself out. And so the mountain goat is the patron representative of Capricorn, right? The mountain goat. And so one foot in front of the other, something very, very physical, something that requires attention and focus and getting it done, basically, and knowing what it takes in order to do that. But it's also methodical, right? It follows a pathway. There is a sense of, if you're out of balance, you're not going to get to where you need to go. So it's also this idea of, like, if you're trying to get up the mountain, like this mountain goat is, you have to stay on the path that is going to lead you up these switchbacks, right? And it's a narrow pathway. So also being in balance in every single moment is how you're going to unfold or follow the pathway. And so the Queen of Forces is something that we can envision, embody for ourselves, as being able to manage through our own emotional feels. It's very difficult to do that when you're still caught in the loop of the battle, but people are starting to get it now. They are, because it's starting to hit people literally where they feel, and in their sense of security and family and home and safety. So, not say that we don't have any means to do anything about it, but it is about the inner balance and this sense of equilibrium within ourselves that is going to come up really strongly with our first quarter moon tomorrow, I think. And in a lot of ways is going to almost require us to restructure what it is we're doing based on what we are identified with and how we feel at the moment. So, and a moon in Libra is the first time in the zodiac, if you start at Aries, where we are starting to identify or at least feel into the form of the relationship itself. Whereas the sun in Cancer, or any body in Cancer, the sign itself is about the individual's character within the space or within the context of that home, family, group identification. But it's still very much about how we identify ourselves. So that we're going to have to start thinking about and feeling into the larger social contract. And I think that that's the causal factor that is going to lead to the tipping of all of these cups over emotionally for a lot of people, because actions have consequences and affect more than just us individually all the time. That's what it means to be part of a collective. So, oh boy. Okay. Now, when it comes to breaking out of our self-imposed limitations, the caught in the ruins of the past, you know, the emu is definitely a ground bird, right? It is not really flying much anywhere, but it is moving quickly across the landscape, and it has feathers, it has wings, it has the shape of a bird. Something to consider too is that the moon crossing through Libra in the next 2 days means it's going to meet Arcturus, and it's also going to meet Spica. And so there's this sense of spirit, wisdom, a sense of transcendence, a sense of real balance and equilibrium between ourselves and what is outside of us, theoretically, right? The balance within the universe is where we find real freedom. Now, this just suggests that it's time to go on a new adventure, right? Listen to your heart, follow your instincts, give yourself space for that pilgrimage. I can't tell you how many people I have been giving that counsel to just in the last 2 weeks. It's time to go on an adventure, meaning give yourself the opportunity to discover and explore and to create space for something new. I mean, if you don't even acknowledge there's somewhere new to go, how do you get out of your the rut or the imposed prison of the past? And maybe the new adventure is into new information, into new knowledge, right? Study and scientific discovery is the MO of the Ascended Master Hilarion. He's the master of research, of healing, spirit communication, and logical mind. These things are all together. So if you are working on something that requires this type of research, I mean, this is great when you get this card because it's like full steam ahead. Drawing conclusions from discovery, right? Not necessarily what you have been told are the conclusions, but drawing them from your own, discovery. You have to first be aware that there is somewhere else to go. That is the 16 caught in the ruins. Now, 16 in the traditional tarot is the Tower. So the idea here is there's probably, of course, with Pluto involved, and the moon making first is in a trine to Pluto at the end of Virgo, and then the moon's going to square Pluto over the next 2 days. And so expecting that type of tower moment to push us out, show a different perspective is part of this. And then realizing there's somewhere else to go, giving ourselves the space and the time and trusting our instincts to go somewhere new. And then we come to new conclusions based on that discovery. But this requires that we're willing to do it, that we actually are willing to discover. We have the courage to discover. Now, the Princess of Wands, she definitely has courage. She's like, let's go for it. And that doesn't mean necessarily that the tipping over the cups is a bad thing, or that the Princess of Wands in her enthusiasm and her courage is burning everything down in the process. It's just part of learning. Maybe there's nothing to go back to when that happens, and perhaps that is something to keep in mind as well. When you kind of you burn the bridge into almost not intentionally, but then you realize but by burning that bridge, it's kind of forced me to go forward and realize that, there's new territory to discover and to experience. This is very favorable, and I do feel the tide turning. And what's really kind of, there is a sense of, again, being kind of the assistance from the planet herself, even with the uptick in solar activity, which is going to be a double-edged sword. I mean, it's still going to most likely draw out anything that is meant to punish this awakening, to anything that is meant to suppress realization that people are coming to. And one thing that somebody, who was it? I can't remember. Oh, I think it was Alex Collier. I think it was recently, but it may have been a very old webinar. It's something that stuck out. And he's like, even if there was no looking glass, all of it would have happened in this way anyway, because it's written into the cosmic calendar, which is what astrology is all about, understanding. Here we are anyway. It's just that we got an upper hand with some of that perspective outside of the linear experience of time. So, and either way, here we are, right on schedule. So I don't know. It feels to me like there's obviously something to be gained here, despite all of the heartbreak and the feelings of disempowerment, or the sense of being trapped somewhere. But it's all part of gaining even more than what we maybe burned down and left behind. Yeah, it's sad. Yeah, it kind of throws us off, and there's a lot of attachment still to this old system, but where it's going, and this is you could feel that this is the turning of it in some ways. So which will inevitably, just like any sixth house Virgo thing, the hidden enemies are going to come out of the woodwork. So, but right now is more of a focus on what we can, where we can, giving ourselves the space to discover something new and to move on to, and focus on the evolution of humanity instead of continuing to get caught in this web of divisiveness that continues to it's everywhere, right? It's such an old, crusty story that it really is just kind of, crumbling away and will just blow away in the wind eventually. But in the meantime, we're living through that experience as if it's our own, that we, in fact, are all dying and crumbling and blowing away in the wind. So it's not easy. It really isn't. So we're going to move on to the astrology for today's Starseed ministry. I'm going to check in with the chat here in a second and see how things are going. And let me bring up the chart so that people get a sense of what to expect here. The sun is still in conjunction, with Sirius, and Lilith is in conjunction these things may mean. So, all right, guys. It must be, I'm guessing that the stream is just buffering in such a way that it's not very easy to listen to it. That's such a bummer. One day I will figure it out. Okay, friends, so here is the 5th of July, 2022. I went over a general monthly forecast on Friday. That is going to be linked at the end of this video. If you're on YouTube, if you're on any of the other platforms, you just got to scroll down and you'll find the monthly forecast for July. And I talked about a lot of the major themes. So, but this is just so striking if we look at today's chart, because what we see here is me trying to still format it. Okay, mystic rectangle, actually, with the moon in Virgo, is making a connection to her own nodal axis, a trine and a sextile, and then the moon is opposite Neptune today, and it's wide, but there is this mystic rectangle that is kind of written into the moon's transits today. You also see that Mars and Mercury are in a 0 degrees of Taurus, 0 degrees of Cancer. The sun is conjunct Sirius with 13 to 14 degrees Cancer. The fixed star Sirius, in relation to Western astrology, currently its position is 14 to 15 degrees Cancer in terms of its longitude. So it is still within a degree. And it'll be in conjunction with Sirius from yesterday, today, tomorrow, and so. We'll find ourselves really identifying with the infinite wisdom, right? The changeless reality, the permanent truth that Sirius fully represents, right? The void, the space, the darkness, of the womb, of the darkness, of the feminine, right? The sacred goddess. And so lots to explore in terms of the Starseed activation here, lots to explore in terms of the mystery schools and the occult and esoteric reference to Sirius, and Procyon, Lilith in conjunction with the star Procyon. So that's also in Canis Minor. So these are two stars, fixed stars. There's two starseed origin points. They are both Behenian fixed stars, which means they have a quality about them that is used in more practice, occult or esoteric practice, and you can look that up, Behenian, Behenian. I'll link it in the description box if you're interested, like just the Wikipedia. So, and they're almost all of them are all Starseed origins. So you can see the overlap of these types of narrative structures, from the ancient history to the Starseed origin. It's all in the astrology. So, Lilith is in conjunction with Procyon, and that Starseed story is much more about the grief and Procyon, in terms of a starseed story, is a star system where they had to shut off from any new souls coming in. So any souls that ventured out of that experience and that density in particular, in order to whatever you're doing, found themselves unable to return back to their soul, to one of their soul origins, and that's been very difficult, I think, for many of the Procyon starseeds. This dynamic is going to be so strongly highlighted when the sun is opposite Pluto, because that means the sun will be in conjunction with Procyon. And so that dynamic of not being able to return home or having your home taken away from you in some way is going to be, it's going to come right to the surface. It's going to be really illuminated. It's something that is going to be strongly identified with, and it's going to show us where it's going to be like a very strong karmic readjustment. And I wish I could say different, and maybe it won't be nearly as dramatic as I've dreamt it to be when the moon has crossed to this point at different times, but it was like something literally hooking up to my current home, my actual home, and pulling it away. So there is an overlay or a soul resonance with the Procyon starseeds to that experience, and there's something very important to remember about it, but also with Lilith involved, to also consider that this is where the insular nature is. You close people off, right? There are souls that can't return home because there's a need to protect so much that they closed off from their own. And there's something very powerful about this that Lilith is right now tapping us all into deep. From now, it's already at 13 degrees, and we would be at 25, 26, 27 degrees Cancer. It's going to be it's going to be a lot more on the surface and identified. So what we see here in the meantime is so much opportunity surrounding. You have this mystic rectangle with the moon and Neptune and her own nodes. It's the moon in Virgo. I mean, it's getting down to it now, right? Emotionally, that emotional hygiene, that astral hygiene, that subconscious organization. And not only that, but starting to bring it forward in a way that allows one to start participating, right? This is getting to the point of birthing into Libra. This is a pretty substantial point, just like from Pisces into Aries, where we go from the individual consciousness and its development into the first step into the social order, into the relationship, into the material, right? To come from oneself into an offering of oneself to something more, to create something more. And that's ultimately what the 8th house in Scorpio represents. This, it's difficult. It's just the little old moon over here opposite Neptune and Pisces, especially in its retrograde now, that has really started to dissipate the fog, but is also very painful in terms of, oh, this is the direction, is it? Or very painful in terms of, I thought I was following a certain trajectory spiritually and cosmically, and perhaps there is more I have to go within and address now at this level before really moving forward. So either there is incredible clarity and lucidity here, or there is a deepening or just dispersing oneself into the fantasy delusion, into psychosis, right? I mean, this is pretty substantial in terms of those types of experiences. The moon opposite, though, is just kind of like a reality check in some ways of like, don't lose yourself to this full experience as powerful and encompassing as it is. In your own self is where you step forward and participate. Your own self, your own feels, your own subconscious, your own power steps forward and starts participating in this process, right? It's really important we don't forget this. And like I said, with the connection to the nodes in a very harmonious and balanced way, especially the moon in a trine to the north node right before this happens, is, you have a mystic rectangle. It is all of this opportunity and balance and foundation and support surrounding a cross point, a juncture, and opposition and tension going both ways. It really helps get to the midpoint of this. So again, there's a sense of participation, a sense of training, a sense of astral hygiene. I think this is really strong in a way that is really allowing us to tap into a deeper soul journey that is bringing us to recognize what and the collective unconscious, and how do we step out of that the soupiness of that, right, without losing touch with it, but also maintaining a sense of personal integrity and balance. And I think that a part of that is also remembering where we've been, which is obeying our conscience in the face of something that we don't agree with, and especially an aggressive or authoritarian tendency, right? We've done this before, right? People have done this. And I actually have a post on Telegram about this that I lifted from another social media post that's really fulfills this degree in particular of where the South Node is right now. So don't forget who you are. Don't forget where we've come from, right? Realize that we're here to participate in this process. And as powerful and as, like I said, dissolving or just getting caught in the undertow of it all, as intense as it can be, right? Realize that there is so much to learn from this, right? This goes back to the reading again. Those 9 of Cups, right? This is not happiness necessarily. This is like just go sink deeper into the fantasy or the delusion in order to avoid stepping into this part of ourselves. So boy, oh boy, Lilith at the same time is part of this in a way where you can see there's another rectangle here. In fact, there is so much incredible geometry just in this chart right now. Again, you can feel it in the reading, and you can just feel it in general, at least I can, that there is a emotional kind of spiritually based realization here. There is a deep feeling and an awareness. It may be really deep, is this emotional and spiritual foundation here of what is really important to us, and where we find our sense of safety and security, even in these cathartic moments of massive karmic readjustment. There's so much insular that it calcifies, right? That you can't, if you're not going to allow anything in, where is the growth? There isn't any. And so there's something about this conversation with Neptune and Pisces too that can dissolve some of those boundaries in when it's necessary in a new place. Wow. This is incredible. I don't know what's going to come out. When I do these transmissions, I just know the different facets, and I feel like I just feel like that we can that it's going to be okay, because people are starting to realize the value of human life and togetherness and family, and how precious life itself is. And without taking care of that space, what is the point, right? And Mercury and Mars in their sextile at 0 degrees is also really bringing it down to that level as well. And even in terms of our mind, our communication, our speech, our action is so embodied now in our natural inherent value and worth. It's not going to be easy with Mars and Taurus necessarily, because you can find yourself getting really stuck in the mud, especially if you just want to burn yourself out. But the sextile to Mercury and Cancer is like, hey, you can allow the natural energy to move through that, your means of action, by identifying where you want to really establish and to identify what it really feels like, so that we can act from that place or be ready to receive what comes through spontaneously on near August 1st, the beginning of August, when Mars, Uranus, and the North Node are in a conjunction. Oh my gosh. And I certainly talked about that on Friday too. That is a big deal. As far as I'm concerned, that is a big deal. These three in a conjunction with each other on August 1st. So you can bet that by the end of July, things are going to start heating up, and we are reaching that point of the true Pluto return of the U.S. where it was retrograde, and now it also come back to that point in its retrograde, and that's July 11th. So what else is happening today in terms of the moon? Well, like I said, it's going into Libra today. So that means it'll square Mercury, of course, the moon, and becoming aware of the seed, the hidden seed in that moment is, and feeling it, right? And becoming internally aware of it. And this is what it's all for. And right now what I'm feeling is the square with Mercury that is going to be by the end of today, is almost a sense of not wanting to necessarily mentally kind of hover above all of this, to be fully present and to realize that it is so much more than just us and how we each individually feel. It starts there, absolutely, but the moon is bringing us into awareness now of what it's all for and what the nature of the relationship really feels like, and why relationship is even important, because that is where creation happens. Regardless of the type of relationship. We don't stay in the duality. It's part of the mechanism of creation. So right before this happens, though, the moon is going to be actually in a trine to Pluto. Like I said, this is our astral hygiene. Like, are we up to speed with all of that? And if so, then this trine to Pluto is, and here's that, Here's another mystic rectangle with Lilith again, as part of the conversation. But the moon at these last degrees of Virgo, again, it's kind of this Procyon thing, like what has been learned, and what kind of personality has been cultivated and ready to be offered into relationship as a result of what has been learned about our own fortitude, right? I think you have to really learn how to take, if you find yourself not able to return to that sense of protection and home, right? That can be so destabilizing, but what does it do? It forces you to go deeper. It forces you to find that place within yourself where you are infinitely always connected to Source and the Great Spirit. And that is real mastery, and that is very much exemplified in late Virgo, in my opinion, of being, sheer power of your own personality and the strength of that root system in being able to gather what it needs from the world around in order to purify and reconstitute yourself as an individual. So this very much, the moon trine Pluto in general, just know that, the intensity of emotional experience and the rawness and the power that comes it's almost like this personality can only really show itself and find expression because of this connection to Pluto in Capricorn, where the very container of our society is going through elimination and exposure right now in order to prepare for transformation. So to, again, realize that despite all of the intensity of feeling that it is bringing out around Procyon and the story of Procyon, that there is there's something to be gained here, just like we talked about in the reading. And Procyon, we'll talk a lot about this in the Catalyst classroom next week, but one thing, if you wanted to look up in terms of the Greek mythology, Procyon was the name of the navigator for the Argos, right? The Jason and the Argonauts, right? The Golden Fleece, and as an allegory of our journey of discovery of who we are, where we came from, right? The gold, the alchemist's gold, right? The true value of who we are and where we came from. Procyon was the navigator, so just consider that as well, right? Leaving home in order to find some, to expand and discover and find something new, only not to be able to return to that, and always needing to re-establish that sense of connection to something deeper and infinite. These are going to be stories that are going to continue to come up throughout the course of this month. And today's astrology just seems to really bring it out in all of these different ways. So I would say enjoy it if you can. Not everybody is going to necessarily enjoy it, but it's going to bring out a lot of feels. So if you are a Syrian starseed, if you have Procyon starseed, it's not something I've been reading for until very recently. So if you've had a starseed reading from me and I've never brought up Procyon for you and you want to know, I'm going to be offering like a micro reading, or maybe I'll offer it just to subscribers, like update the starseed reading. I'm still offering the starseed reading at a discount, by the way. That's a great segue into that. Just in case you haven't seen the flyer, I'm offering it at a discount. You can go to the website and book right from the homepage. It's $66 for a 60-minute recording. If you're already aware of it, I'm really just going to keep this up for a while because I feel like people really are getting a lot of value out of this. Usually I require a natal chart reading first because it's so hard for it to get the full picture without that foundation. But if you have a really good, strong basis in your chart already, then it's a great addendum, right? It's a multidimensional type of overlay or transposition onto your natal chart. So I'm going to leave it there today, my friends. I'm going to check in with the stream and see how it's doing. I think it's probably been it's been a good weekend for people, maybe not such a good weekend. Buckle up, guys. It's starting to get very, very real. But the good news of that is that is where people wake up, right? The dark night of the soul is never, the spiritual journey is not sunshine and rainbows all of the time. You usually have to go through a lot. You have to go through the storm oftentimes to get to that point. So, that's a lot of what we are learning how to shelter ourselves from right now. And Syrian starseeds, this is your time right now with the sun in conjunction with Sirius. You can really find identification with this part of yourself, right? And this is something we'll talk more about in the Catalyst classroom next week. So if you want any information about any of my offerings, services, what other platforms that I'm posting on, how to get on the email list, it's all in the description box below. I love you guys. Thank you for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you so much. I'll see you. Time for some, there will be plenty of time for some outer reorientation as a result of that. So take care of yourselves this week. Let's check in on Telegram about CERN firing up today. I'm really curious and a little horrified to know what's going to be happening. So let's stay in touch, guys. I will see you on Friday. Take care of yourselves. Take care, Ken. And I love you. See you later.